First of all, who were our heroes? Well, we all know Warren is not a big fan of Bitcoin, so forgive the fact that I put him up there, maybe a bit of a deliberate pun. But there is something to be learned from what is essentially the most successful investor of all time. He constantly gives advice on investment. What are the things that have made him successful? And he always says the same thing: patience. What most people want to do is they want to beat the market. Instead of buying the S&P 500, which you can easily do these days through Vanguard products and what have you, people want to trade and beat the market. And 9 times out of 10, you will lose money. I've worked in banking most of my life, and I can tell you that 80% of the traders I've worked for have always lost money. And this is professional traders, right, that have done it for 30 years. So most of us, if we try and trade, you might hit a lucky break, but if you're honest with yourself, 90% of the time, you end up losing money. So what's his advice? Invest for the long term, right? In other words, what do we call that in the Bitcoin space? HODL, right? But if you think about the traditional way of investing, and again, like I said, my generation, it was all about investing in property. So I've got a couple of properties myself. But you think about the value of the property going up. If you're lucky, it doubles in value over a 10-year period. That's on average what you expect property to be able to do. If you think about the world in Bitcoin terms, we all tend to think about Bitcoin in dollars. So you go, okay, the price of Bitcoin is going up. But if you think about Bitcoin as a unit of value, right? A house would have cost you 664 Bitcoin in 2016. You can buy the same house today, even if it gone up in value, with 6.6 Bitcoin. So the fact that Bitcoin is finite means that eventually we know the price is going to go up. We love to talk about bull runs, Bitcoin waves, but if you invest in Bitcoin and you think about Bitcoin over a 10, 20-year period, there are few asset classes out there that promise the same level of return. So from my perspective, I found myself in a position where when I bought Bitcoin back in 2016, I went from not having a pension pot at all. I lived in 6 different countries. I couldn't really invest because the fact that even if I started investing, for example, I lived in Australia. If I started putting money into a superannuation in Australia, I lived there for 3 years, then I left. It's useless to me when I live in other countries. Tax implications, moving it around, it's just a pain in the ass. There's no other way to describe it. So now all of a sudden I decided, having joined Zappo, I'll buy Bitcoin. Those Bitcoin are now worth more than all my properties put together. So Bitcoin has, by default, become my retirement plan. And I didn't plan it to be that way, it just happened. Now, why am I telling you this story? I'm not particularly special. I just find that a lot of our customers at Zappo have similar stories to mine. They all bought Bitcoin thinking, here's an investment that I'm making in Bitcoin, hoping that the value goes up. It went up way beyond our expectations, even though that we knew it eventually would go up. When it happens, you go, wow, this thing is real. We go from talking about Bitcoin as potential future to actually having an asset that you go, this has changed my life. This is now how I can retire.